Good afternoon. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Treasure Coast. I'm Bob McDonald, the minister here. If you don't know anything about UU, I just want you to know that we are a progressive religion. We don't judge people who believe differently. We don't judge people who love differently. And we don't judge people who vote differently. Our first principle is the inherent worth of every person. One of our principles is use of the democratic process. That's a small d, which means voting. We're big on voting. And the month or so before an election, you hear about voting at UU. So we're glad you're here. We think political difference is for dialogue and debate, not for demonization. How in the world did that ever come to America? But anyhow, let the dialogue and the debate begin. Welcome.
Hi there. I'm Donna from the League of Women Voters. Reverend McDonald, thank you so much. We appreciate your generosity and that of your congregation in welcoming us into your sanctuary. The central mission of the League of Women Voters is to encourage informed, active participation of citizens in government through voter service and education. And this is exactly the kind of program that helps us do that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Now to welcome the candidates. There are 6 people running in these races, these 3 races, and we invited all of them, but not all of them were able to be here. So far, the arrivals are Mr. Denzel, wherever he went, there he is, Ray Denzel, running for Florida House 86. John Snyder, also running for Florida House 86, and Toby Snyder, running for Florida House 85. I'm sorry. Well, it's sort of.
Corinna is running 3 minutes late. She'll be back
Yeah. The candidates will tell you about themselves in a moment, but first let me tell you the rules for this forum. Each candidate will have 5 minutes for opening remarks and 3 minutes for closing. In between, they'll take questions from the audience. Carolyn, would you pick up those forms over there and wave them? Carolyn will have question forms. If you have a question for a candidate, you raise your hand, she'll bring you the form. You write it on the form and give it back to her. All the remarks and answers will be timed by Tom Campenny, down here, one of our league board members. And we ask you this, try and make your question shorter than you think the answer might be. Again, we will take these candidates in the order of which they drew their cards for opening statements, and then that order will be reversed for the closing statements. In the tradition of the kind of place we're in, the last will be first. The candidates have drawn numbers to determine the order of speaking, the candidates who've arrived so far. So I think we can get started. Who has the lowest number? I think somebody had a 2. Mr. Overdorf. The opening remarks from up here, and then we'll do the Q&A from the standing.
And where do you want us after we our opening remarks.
Along here.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today and the opportunity to be able to speak to you all. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Toby Overdorf, and I have been a resident on the Treasure Coast for approximately 26 years now. I came down originally from Massachusetts. My dad was a naval aviator, so I moved around a lot growing up, and then settled in Massachusetts, came down here to become a resident of Florida the day after Hurricane Andrew. So I drove right through Homestead on my way to work, which was a marine science job in the Florida Keys. And I taught marine biology, et cetera, in the Florida Keys. So literally in one day, I saw Florida at its worst going through Homestead, and then Florida at its most incredible beauty when I arrived on Big Pine Key down in the Keys. From there, I decided that I probably wouldn't have the greatest jobs by just staying down there and kind of being an intern, and decided to come back up and got my master's degree at Florida Atlantic University, Master of Science in Biology at Florida Atlantic, and did my master's thesis on the restoration of the Kissimmee River. So worked all throughout the restoration work there, and then went on to work in private consulting after that, and have been here ever since. So I've seen all kinds of different things happening within the Treasure Coast. My wife and I have been married for 22 years. We have one daughter who is fully grown, gone through UF. She's off the payroll now, and she lives down in Miami on Brickell, where she's a real estate agent down there. And we just had great news in that she recently got engaged, so now we have a pending wedding coming up as well. All that being said, I've also been a part of the community here for many, many years, whether it be through the Stewart Martin County Chamber, the Palm City Chamber where I was president. Leadership Martin County is an area, as I was in Class 9 for Leadership Martin County. St. Lucie County is another area that I focused on within the chamber there, within the Economic Development Council. Also with the Treasure Coast Wildlife Hospital, I've worked with them. Martin County Audubon, I was in the board there for a while. So a variety of different things, as you can see, in giving back. Another area that I worked in was Kairos Prison Ministry, which gave me an opportunity to really go into the prisons and see what's happening there and talk to some of the inmates one-on-one and understand the struggles both from their side, from the overall side of looking at the penal system, and then finally in the family side as well. So finally one day, after a long conversation, political debate back and forth with my dad, he said, look, it's time to put your money where your mouth is and get into the game. So I did and signed up, and by the grace of God, I was elected, and I've now served 2 terms. I'm looking to hopefully get up for my 3rd term. While I've been up in Tallahassee, I've worked on a variety of different things, including everything from human trafficking is an area that I really try to focus on. It's not something that's very pretty or sexy by any means, but it's something that has to be focused on. When we look at what's happening in our nation right now, there's a lot of folks out there that are potentially could fall into whether it be labor trafficking or sex trafficking, and Florida needs to be prepared for that. I've worked hard on the environment in a variety of jobs there, and looking at both best management practices, making that not a volunteer program, but making it actually a mandatory program. Water sampling and water quality is something that I do every day. I look at it, and environmental restoration, so that's an area that I focus on as well. And then also looking at ways that I can do skill training and promote skills training, where everybody deserves a great job, but not everybody has to go to college and come out potentially with a large debt as well. So those are opportunities that I've really tried to focus on while I'm up there. Finally, looking also at transportation issues and also airport issues. As I progress towards this next area there, we're also looking at opportunities then to move up in leadership and move up in ways that I can be influential in the House. This past year, I was the Republican Majority Whip for my silo, and was able to be influential in a variety of different legislation up there. But the thing that I think I pride myself the most on is constituent services and being able to take you and represent you up there. One example being a local gentleman here gave me an idea, said this is something that really needs to be addressed. He gave that idea to me in February. We made an amendment in March, and it was law by June. And just amazing that we were able to do that. A lot of things lined up correctly, but this is some of the things we were able to do. So I love the opportunity to be able to serve you today, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here in front of you and speaking to you, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of great questions from the audience. So thank you so much.
Mr. Snyder and Mr. Denzel, you want to come over so we can keep track of your votes? I think you have the next number.
Who does?
What's your number?
4.
You're it.
All right. Well, good evening. And again, thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to come and meet with you. This is what the process is all about. It feels like just yesterday I was running for my first term, but here in the Florida House, we run in 2-year cycles, and we have term limits, both of which I think are good things and help keep us accountable and prevent career politicians, which I know is something that the Founding Fathers did not envision when they crafted our Constitution 250 years ago. So just a little bit about me. I was born and raised here in Martin County. I was privileged to serve 5 years in the United States Marine Corps, and I saw, sir, when we were pulling in, I saw your Vietnam service, and so I just wanted to say thank you for your service and for all the veterans here with us this evening. I've been married for 14 years to my wife, Brittany, who I met while I was in the Marine Corps, and have my daughter, Elizabeth, here with me this evening. Elizabeth, can you wave? 11 years old and is a 6th grader here in the public school system in Martin County. And we also have a 2-year-old baby, Reagan, who, again, has kind of helped us keep track of campaign or the timeline since we were elected, because she was born just before the election back in 2020. So my day job by trade, what keeps the lights on at home, I own a staffing and payroll company working in the recruitment space, and I could tell you first and foremost, our talent and the labor shortages that we're seeing across the country. We feel it in our restaurants, we feel it when we're out in the community, and that's something that I'm very focused on. How can we make sure we continue to have a robust economy and all of the different pieces that go into making sure we have the labor pool that can meet the demands that we have. In politics, as somebody who's now been in it for 2 years, I often joke, I said I've never worked so hard for a title that I didn't want to claim, be a politician. But I think we live in such a time where everything is so hyper partisan, and when you watch the news, when you scroll through social media, that message just continues to drive forward. But one of the things that you often don't hear about is, and just to share some statistics with you, some facts of what's happened in our last legislative session. Over 80% of the legislation that was passed was unanimous. That means every Republican, every Democrat that was on the floor of the Florida House of Representatives voted in support of meaningful legislation that we're trying to bring solutions for the 22.5 million people that call Florida home. Over 90% of the legislation that we voted on and eventually passed was bipartisan. That means at least someone from each party voted in support of those measures. Now, what ends up happening is that 10%, Tom, as you know, that's what usually dominates the headlines and what you hear the most about. And that's something I've always been clear from day one. With John Snyder, you're going to know exactly where I stand. And I think on some of these 10% issues, those are areas where robust debate is important. It's okay for us not to agree and to see eye to eye, but that's how we try and move legislation through the process, and why we have elections and why elections have consequences. But at the end of the day, and as Representative Overdorf said, when someone calls my office or reaches out to someone on my staff, I can tell you one question we never ask: what's your voter registration party? We don't care, because that's really what service is about: is trying to make a difference in the lives of the people that call District 86 home. And in the last 2 years, there's 3 pieces of legislation that we were able to get completely across the finish line, signed into law, and things that I believe really will make a difference. First and foremost, in my first term, working to really enhance our child protective teams and the folks that make the investigations in instances of child abuse. How can we really protect the most vulnerable in our society? In 30 more seconds, I'll just say passing traveling criminals, make sure that we're keeping public safety first and foremost, and expanding teacher certification opportunities for veterans. Again, that was a unanimous piece of legislation as we try and address the teacher shortage and find ways to lean on experience of our veteran community. So again, John Snyder, look forward to answering the questions and appreciate the time with you this evening.
Good afternoon, good evening, all ships at sea. Ray Denzel, running against John for District 86. Quick background, been here since 1988, moved from Chicago, where I joked with somebody, on your birth certificate, they actually stamp your party affiliation when you're born. So I've been a Democrat since that time. Moved down here with 2 daughters and had my son here. Ray had been here for 3 or 4 years when Hurricane Andrew hit, so it was a tumultuous start for our stay down here in Florida. I've been in business, management, sales my whole career, and I know about the bottom line and doing best for people. Talking about legislation that was passed and the 10%, the things that come to mind, first of all, there's a committee for pandemic and public safety, and we're finishing up a pandemic, hopefully. That committee didn't seem to work too well. Over 7 million people have gotten sick from COVID, and over 81,000 people have died from COVID. So that's a huge drop-off. Also, things in that 10% that were passed were voting against women's right to choose, voter suppression, things that shouldn't have happened, even with public discourse and with everybody else. So there's a lot of things that have to be fixed. John leans one way, I lean the other. My job when I get there is to roll back that 10% that has put this whole state in quandary. And if you've been on Roosevelt Bridge and seen the protests, people are very enthusiastic to get back what they had and be treated right. What I do, I'm a fixer. I'm a problem. I'm the guy on speed dial that you can call. I help people. I don't have to trumpet it. I like to do stuff that's nobody knows about, and it makes me feel better and makes the person feel better, so I'm not doing it for show. But that's where I am. I'm a hardworking guy. Did lose a loved one to COVID, so it affects me personally, and it's one of the things that got me into this. And on top of that, the voter suppression bill that was passed to make it harder for people to vote, and even the supervisor elections, if a vote is done wrong on a tally, they get fined $25,000 out of their own pocket. So this is not the Florida I want, the legacy. Oh, one other thing is the pollution, Lake Okeechobee. Ian just enough bypassed it where we didn't have to dump thousands of gallons per second into the estuaries with tide problems and so on that would cause, which we've gone through in 2016 and 2018. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and most of it when I get up there, is fixing that was already done. And I know how to do that. Thank you very much for your time.
Next is Corinna Robinson. 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Oh my God, I'll take 3. I'm an old combat veteran, so I'm succinct in my message. Well, first of all, thank you so much. When I look across this crowd, I know for you to be here, you deeply care about what we're fighting for. We're fighting for our United States of America. We're fighting for a voice, regardless of partisan politics. We are fighters. So I will just tell you briefly, I will say my ancestors immigrated from Mexico many, many years ago, and they worked on farms, and they became American citizens, and they graduated high school. So I'm so grateful that my grandparents made that leap of faith. And I joined the Army at 17 years of age to serve our country for 25 years. I was a military policewoman, and I'm so humbled to have served in our military. But I continued on. I served in the Pentagon as a government civilian. I established a small business that focused on combating violent extremism and counterterrorism. So in my heart, I am not a partisan politician. I am nation first. I raised 3 handsome sons. They're grown. Oh my God, they're like 32, 31, and 28 now. But I'm deeply concerned that the trajectory we're facing in America is that we have more hate than love. And I've served around the world. I've been in Afghanistan, Iraq, Tajikistan, Colombia, and I chose to leave my small business that could have been very lucrative to help my sons pay off their college loans because I love you and I love Florida. And this is where I've always, I owned a timeshare in Jupiter for many, many years. I love America. I will fight to the end. And I will promise you that upon your election on November 8th, that it will never waver. I'm only 57. I've got another 20, 30 years to fight. And believe me, I will go back into uniform if I needed to, like the people in Ukraine right now, to fight for America. But I'm here, I'm running for Congressional District 21, that the heart and soul, I believe, of this district is right here in Stewart. So I'm hoping and praying that upon November 8th, that I garner your vote. In full confidence, I've worked on Capitol Hill. I've drafted legislation. I have been in committee meeting hearings. I've run congressional roundtables. I'm fully capable of doing the job. And I'm not saying that incumbent Brian Mast is not capable, but I will say to the end that I will fight for America, I will fight for you, and I hope for your vote. Thank you.
Okay, are we on here? Is this mic live? So far, the winner of the question raffle is Ms. Robinson. We'll see how many Carolyn brings there. There we go, thank you. Okay, this is gonna be, I'm gonna shuffle these just to make them kind of Okay, the first question is for Representative Snyder. Constitution Revision Commission, retain or abolish? And I'd suggest when you answer it, you also give us the why.
Can you hear me? So I think the question was in regards to the Constitution Revision Committee, which is enshrined in the Constitution, and so for a change like that to happen would require a ballot initiative, and so that's something that I believe has been put in place by the voters, and it's up to the voters to make that decision on the CRC.
They want to know where you come up. It's on the ballot, so I think what they want to know is where you recommend retaining it or abolishing it. We have to vote November 8th.
Yeah, I'll be voting to retain it. Yeah, I think there's value in having citizen input every 20 years to because it's not that the revision committee can just carte blanche make revisions to the Constitution. It would be basically recommendations that would be brought back to a ballot initiative for the voters to decide.
Thank you. Am I audible now? I don't know. What am I doing wrong? Thank you. Okay. This one's for Ms. Robinson. Will you please make some better laws to curb the use of fertilizers, make stronger penalties for polluters, and make them build their own water storage areas to clean pollutants? That's a tall order there, but I'm sure you can cover it in 1 minute.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And we know that's a state issue more than federal, but absolutely. You know, I will not accept money from Big Sugar or Disney or anyone else who's polluting our waters. I know they make a lot of money for the state of Florida. However, they are the ones polluting the waters in Lake Okeechobee. And when the waters rise, it goes downward, right? So what I would hope to strive for, it's not enough to slap the hand to have a particular penalty or fine. We are all depending on clean water, clean air, and we have to do whatever we can to hold people personally accountable. I've served in Iraq. I've served in Afghanistan. I suffer from a lot of conditions where I don't breathe fully through my lungs. And we are here in Florida, and we suffer from pollution and a lot of bad contaminants. So yes, I will support that. Thank you.
Representative Overdorf, what is being done to reduce septic systems in the Orlando and Kissimmee areas so that Lake O will reduce its pollution?
Well, thank you for the question. There's a couple different items there that I think we need to talk about. It's not just the Orlando area. Actually, Orlando's on a fair amount of, they've done the conversions already, and they have a fair amount of septic to sewer conversions that have already happened. Kissimmee Basin, absolutely. That's an area that we need to focus on. The Kissimmee River restoration finally actually completed this past year after almost 38 years of work out there. With that being said, there's additional work that needs to get done. This year, we're going to be working on an initiative for infrastructure that will take basically the septic to sewer conversion, instead of it being piecemeal, instead of it being where one representative puts in for a municipality, another representative puts in for a municipality, we actually create a 20-year plan. So that it's just like a transportation program where we currently have a 20-year road program. Now we're going to do it also for septic to sewer conversions. So it's a piece of legislation that we're going to be introducing this year that will lay this out over 20 years in a very orderly fashion so it comes across the state, not just where areas that may have favor with a certain representative.
Okay, so this one is for anyone, which I guess means everyone. So any of the four of you who'd care to take it, that's great. And the question is, who should decide what should and should not be taught in public schools.
Oh my God. I will take that as a lifelong educator. But thank you all for being here. I have been an educator in the military, at Georgetown University, at U.S. Special Operations Command, and now in West Palm Beach. I'm deeply concerned that in our education system, we really need to be truthful and honest and candid. We need to remind people who are U.S. citizens how we established our country in full transparency, and to make sure that whether it's a public or a faith-based or a private institution, that we have equality in education. Thank you.
Denzel, Representative Overdorf, Representative Snyder, you want to comment on that one? Did say
Just a couple things on that. I think we have a very good system in place right now with our curriculum review program, with the local districts and the Florida Department of Education. But I think one thing that is very important, and a bill that I was proud to co-sponsor last year, really ensured that our parents have a seat at the table when it comes to the curriculum that's being taught inside of our classrooms. And so we put together basically a protocol where instructional curriculum will be treated just like a library, where if a parent wants to look and see what's being taught inside their classroom, they should be able to log into a website, review that curriculum, and ensure that basic fundamentals of our civil rights and who we are as a nation are very clear for our students to learn.
That's all well and good, but there's a real strong chance of micromanaging by everybody to get in my many voices and not coherent reasoning and so on, and a way to do things. One of the things that was a drawback for the longest time with schools was the testing, teachers being tested to see if they could test the kids. Our kids grew up with this in school and thought it was a joke that they had to get through with it, and it took away from what the kids were supposed to learn to begin with. It's okay to find out what's going on, I think. All right, it's good to have a heads up because we're all so busy to be involved. But to sit there and the teacher has several voices and eyes looking over their shoulder as they try to do their job, which they're trained for and they went to school for and they were educated for, shouldn't happen. Thank you.
So as we look at education, we should never be too busy for our children. We should always be involved. The parents should be involved within this. And I think it's important to have parents involved as you make these decisions. As a parent myself, we were very involved in the school system. All that being said also, I think there's a large emphasis that we have now on our local school board, and the decisions that are made with school board should be done by all of you as citizens. You elect those people that make those decisions within the school board. Finally, I think that it is important to not only have micromanaging, if you will, to have a lot of eyes on things, because frankly, this is what is happening in our next generation. We need to know that. We're proud to be able to have testing removed. We have instead benchmarks that are being put in this year. That was something that we passed this year within the legislature. Additionally, we're having civics education. We're looking at financial literacy. I mean, how many kids previously came out and never knew how to balance a checkbook or what a credit score meant? Those were things that we put into place that I think are really an impact that you'll see in the future. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take a second here and thank the candidates, first of all, for having been so good about the time on their opening statements, and then also being so cooperative on the questions. We do have a lot of questions, and fortunately, we got some time. So And I always think the Q&A is the best part of these things. This one is for Ms. Robinson. The freedom to vote and have our vote counted is fundamental to a functioning democracy. Her opponent voted earlier this year against the Freedom to Vote Act, which would have protected against voting suppression and extreme partisan gerrymandering. 2 questions. Would you have supported this legislation? And, and why do you think he opposed it?
It's a great question. It really is. It really resonates deep in my heart. You know, my ancestors came from Mexico. They worked a hard life. They became American citizens, and they're able to vote. And I feel that in the state of Florida, we've really made it difficult for people to vote freely. You know, whether they drop a ballot in a box outside a government facility that might have camera surveillance, or whether, you know, they vote by mail, or whether they vote in person. You know, this is America, and I want everyone to feel invigorated to vote. You know, by whatever means possible. We should not make it difficult. We should trust the system. Again, I've been to so many countries. Well, one, a democracy does not exist, that women do not have the opportunity to vote. So I would love in America, in the state of Florida, that we really encourage the opportunity for people to vote and trust that their vote is honest and accountable, and that we take it in and we let America speak. We let people speak through the opportunity of their vote. We have too much influence from people who have very wealthy businesses through super PACs, and the money should not matter. Our vote matters.
This one is for Representative Overdorf. I'm going to editorialize it, but I'll read you the question and I'll tell you what I think it's supposed to be. It's unsigned, so I can't clarify it. It's regarding teacher shortage solution. Instead of veterans, how about increasing salaries for teachers? I'm guessing that's in lieu of having veterans as subs or whatever.
Thank you very much. For whoever wrote the question, I'm not sure if you know or not, but it was my bill that actually increased the starting salary for teachers. That was the very first thing that we did to attack this and brought it up. The second part is, the recruiting is also making an atmosphere that the teachers feel appreciated, that the teachers feel that the classroom is an area that they can be a part of educating a child. So I think that those are 2 areas. We have increased it 2 times in a row here. We will continue to increase teacher salary. That is something that we are certainly focused on. They definitely need to have additional benefits and additional opportunities to advance, whether it be through education, salary, and or feeling secure in their classroom. I think those are areas that we are going to and continue to be focused on. So I would ask that whoever asked that question, I'm happy to talk to you further about that. And additionally, please keep abreast of what we're going to be doing. So thank you.
Okay, this is one where you got to buckle up. The question is, and it's for everyone, so I'm going to let you all decide what order you want to go in. What is your view about a woman's right to choose?
Okay. I'm a woman. I was raised in the Catholic faith, and I'm a woman. And I do not want the government to establish my choice. I personally, I personally was married and was on birth control and suffered from having an abortion that I did not expect. And I was in the Army. I was in an emergency room, and my husband was out in the field 2 hours away. I had to make a decision. I knew the embryo was not going to survive. I want every woman, in whatever circumstance she is in, to have the love of her family and her faith to make the decision, point blank.
This was decided years ago. I've been to the protest where they're holding up signs. My God, we have to go through all this again. Not only is it harsh to the woman, it doesn't take into consideration incest, the health of the mother, rape. It's draconian. This is 1984. This is totally wrong. I have 2 daughters, wife. I'm going to tell them what to do with their body. And people sometimes look at this like, well, okay, I'm going to have an abortion. We'll go to the drive-through. There's a lot of angst on all this stuff, a lot of emotional toil that goes through it, a lot of pain, mental. And yet we want to have guys sitting around going, you know, Harry told me we should let them pass this bill because we don't respect women's rights. That is wrong. Thank you.
I'm unapologetically pro-life. And I believe that if there is an opportunity for a child to be born, that should happen. I think that is my personal view. I believe that as a conception happens, that the viability happens at conception, and that should happen there. So it's funny, you know, I'm listening to the crowd here, and I hear the word uttered Jesus as I talk. That's an interesting thing to happen here in this church, that we're uttering that word, yet we believe that there is no opportunity for life and that there is no rights to that fetus and to that baby that is coming forward. And so I believe that that baby has rights as well, and that should be recognized. So that's how I believe. Currently in the state of Florida, we have a 15-week ban that is associated with abortion, and you can have your choice up to that 15-week time frame. Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I'll always tell you exactly where I stand, and I too am a firm believer that life does begin at conception. I know that these are very tough conversations, and that folks, I know I've never had to walk that road, but what I can tell you, the road that I have walked is a few weeks before I left for Afghanistan. The first time I saw my daughter, she was 11 weeks in utero, and when I looked up at that 3D ultrasound and I saw 10 fingers and 10 toes and 2 arms and 2 legs and a human life moving around in my wife's belly, I knew that that was my daughter when they told me that we were having a baby girl. And so because of that deeply moving experience, my religious convictions, that's where I stand. But I also will have to say that it's incumbent upon us, and that's why the 2 years I've served have sponsored critical funding legislation for our foster parents, for Place of Hope, because we can't just talk the talk. We have to be able to say, if we're going to have every life matter, we have to be able to support it outside of the womb as well. Thank you.
Okay, this one's for Ms. Robinson. One of our senators, United States senators, has said that he wants to sunset Social Security and Medicare. What is your view on this? And can the United States continue to pay for Social Security and Medicare? And if you say yes, I'd suggest you also say how.
Well, amen. We can afford it, first of all. We worked hard for those entitlements. So how dare anyone take that away from us? We worked hard for that. So as we spend money elsewhere to pay for other things, we are due that money. So I will fight tooth and nail for it. Thank you. And how? How it's possible. I worked on Capitol Hill. I saw the amount of money that goes through Congress and that we vote for or vote not for. The money is there. I assure you it's there.
Okay, this one's a little, y'all are going to have to figure out how to sort this out. This is for Representative Snyder and Representative Overdorf. Would you vote for a bill increasing the 2-year term of the House of Representatives? Would you vote for term limits, understanding that that wouldn't be something you'd vote for, but you might want to explain how that would happen and if you'd support it?
I don't think I fully understand the question. You know, I don't ever like to talk about hypothetical legislation. That's something that I pride myself in. You learn quickly in Tallahassee that a comma in one place or an and or an or a must or a shall can have two totally different meanings. But just to be clear, the way things work in the Florida House is every 2 years you're up for election. You can serve 4 terms of 2 years, 8 years, and then you're termed out. And I think that's a very good process, and it should stay that way.
It's his question. He thinks that it was misunderstood. The question, would you vote for a bill increasing the 2-year term of the House of Representatives? And I don't know whether he meant state or federal, so.
Okay, so federal. I have no say over what the federal government can or can't do with their term limits. I would like to have term limits within the federal government. I think that's something that we absolutely need to have. As we look at when you have term limits, the downside of that is staff and lobbyists start to become more powerful because they now have the knowledge, the institutional knowledge with it. When you don't have the term limits, the person, if you will, becomes more powerful. But I think that term limits far outweighs the danger of the other side. We have to have term limits. We have to have the opportunity to change over ideas, personnel, et cetera. It's worked well within the state of Florida. The only other thing that I would say to that is that we also need to get a handle on campaign finance reform. It's ridiculous that I should have to raise as much money as I do for the seat that we're in, as well as for the federal side as well. I don't think that we need to have those as well. Thank you.
Are you okay with your answer, or do you want to clarify?
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally in support of term limits.
Okay. This is for Corinna, and I'm going to rephrase it in the interest of clarity. The question is regarding banning election deniers from holding office. And would you do something to ensure that they are banned, and if so, what? So we'll tackle it that way.
So what are our election deniers? I don't know who asked that question. What are election deniers? People who don't want to vote? I don't know. Did somebody ask that question here? Okay. What do you mean?
People who believe that on January 6th, people that insist that the election was stolen, and people that believe that those votes should have been, those electors should have been replaced with fake electors.
Thank you, Julie. I'll keep it to 1 minute. I promise. We live in the United States of America. We have a democracy. We have a voting mechanism where every vote counts. And on January 6th, when there was an insurrection, and I take this deeply personal because I was a military police woman who secured the Pentagon after 9/11. I worked on Capitol Hill. So when that insurrection happened, I could only fathom. I knew exactly what weapons they had, what men and women they had on duty. And when they crossed that barrier and they entered the building and they did what they did, it was heartbreaking. But when those men and women who decided that they would not acknowledge fair elections, again, this is a democracy. So I hope and pray that that never, ever happens again. That when you vote, it's considered fair and proper, and come November 9th, whoever wins the election, we acknowledge that without question. Thank you.
Okay, there are a couple of questions left over that are just, in my view as your moderator, too incendiary to be dealing with, so we're going to skip them and we're going to go to closings. And I think, who had number 6? Mr. Denzel had number 6, so we'll just go in the reverse order of those numbers.
Again, thank you very much for everybody showing up and the sponsorship. And we're on YouTube. It's all pretty cool. I forgot during my opening remarks, thank you. I forgot during my opening remarks to talk about gay rights and including along with women's rights and voters' rights and pollution and more care for veterans. The Don't Say Gay bill, everybody knows somebody, or maybe you think, or maybe you don't know, that's gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, doesn't know what they are. They should be treated as people. And somewhere up in Tallahassee, they decided not to do that. That's wrong. And so, I hear chirping. All right. Okay, all right.
We're extending closing remarks to 5 minutes because we're running early and there's only 4.
Oh my goodness, and that pizza I ordered will be here. We're counting now. So, people ask, well, what are you going to do when you get there? First of all, I have to get there. We got less than 30 days to go. John and I will be sparring here and there on the roads, whatever. But again, it's an even choice. You either like what he's doing or you're going to like what I do. A lot of the things that he's done, I'm against. The bills that he sponsored, I'm against. Some people say, well, you're a Democrat. Yeah, but I don't necessarily have to do the party line, all right? I do what makes sense. I do what's going to help the citizens of my district, my county, and my state. My legacy, I have children, grandchildren. I hope to see them for a long time. I'm trying to do the best I can for this state and for this area and to look out for people. Overwhelming emotion on trying to do right for everybody. That's what I'm in. That's what's in it for you. I'm in it for you. And thank you. I hope to get your vote on November 8th. Ray Denzel. Appreciate it.
Well, one, I love every one of you. You are American citizens. I'm humbled to be here before you as your U.S. congressional candidate for District 21. I have fought hard for America many, many years, 25 years in the military, abroad, additional years in the Pentagon directing anti-terrorism force protection. I have a small business that specializes in anti-terrorism, homeland defense, national security. I've traveled the world. I left all of that, helping my sons pay off their college loans. I left that 2 years ago. You may remember I ran against State Senator Gail Harrell, who's a lovely woman. She chaired the Health Policy Committee, and I felt encumbered to run against her because I understand the utilization of the National Guard amidst a pandemic. She's a nice woman. But this time, I'm running against Brian Mast. He's a fellow soldier. All I can say is that I have the credentials. I have the experience, I have the leadership to not just serve in senior levels of the military or the U.S. government, among interagencies, among national, international people, that I have chose to be here in your district to serve as your U.S. congressman, congresswoman. And I pledge to you that I will not skip a beat. My sons are grown. I can live off a cot in a tent. And that's what I'll do. You hear the rumors about congressmen and women sleeping in their offices. I will be that kind of representative for you. I'm going to give you everything I have to represent you. I am not a partisan politician. Will never be. I've served on Capitol Hill where men and women are told you're going to vote when you're in session, no or yes. And very few occasions will you tell the party chair no or yes. You do what you're told. I will do what's best for America, because that's what you're supposed to do as a congresswoman or a congressman. You do what's best in the nation. And then you look out for your constituents. I care about the environment. I care about our education. I care about our water. I care about so much. My soul will be given to you. I'm a Christian first. I am. And then I care about you as my family. And then I care about the job as a congresswoman. I pledge to you on November 8th, God willing, I will win this election, and I will serve, not just I believe in term limits. I will serve for you for at least 6 years, maybe 8 if I'm fortunate, for everything you want me to do. You have my personal cell phone. You have my email. Call me. I'm accessible. Thank you so much.
Well, folks, thanks again for the opportunity to be here. You know, it's not often with a bunch of elected officials and aspiring politicians we can get out almost an hour ahead of time on schedule, but just want to say again in closing, about aside from serving in the Marine Corps and watching my daughters be born, being your representative the last 2 years has been one of the highest honors of my lifetime. And many of you, if you vote by mail, already have your ballots maybe at home. Maybe you were waiting for this evening to cast your vote, or you might be going in the coming weeks to make your voice heard. And what I would ask is when you look at the District 86 bubble, you can look, and when you see John Snyder's name, you can look at a record of service. And while we might not agree on some of the partisan talking points, if you choose not to vote for me, that's okay. But I hope I do earn your vote, because what I hope to accomplish as we go back in the next 2 years is continuing to take on what we know is the rising cost of property insurance. We still do have work to be done in our environment. Even though we did put over $1 billion into Everglades restoration, we know we cannot take the foot off the pedal. We've got to keep it down. Our education system, so critically important, and Florida is continuing to lead. We're on the path to become the top 3 K through 20 education state in the nation, and that's something that we must continue to work on so we can continue to attract high-quality teachers and ensure that our next generation has every opportunity that they can to pursue the American dream. So with that, again, I thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. If you'd like to reach out, our website is electjohnsnyder.com. All my contact info is on there. And again, hope to have your vote on November 8th. And hope you have a wonderful evening. God bless.
Well, thank you again. For those that know me now, my name is Toby Overdorf. All that being said, I just want to say thank you again for this opportunity to be here today. I think what's interesting in this is that you've seen some people that show up, that want to be there for you. You see some people here that want to work. We may not agree on everything, but what was interesting is as we went through this, some smatterings of, wow, I guess we do agree on some things. Wow, there are some common ground that we have. And I think that's part of our democratic process. We certainly do have common ground as Americans, as patriots, and what we believe to be the best for our country. That's why you're here right now and exercising your right to vote and your right to make that decision. I'm proud of the work that we've done thus far in the Florida House. There is certainly a lot more work that needs to be done as we move forward within this state. A state that, by the way, is leading the country in examples. I travel across this country. I've been in Atlanta, I've been in Colorado, I've been in Montana, Wyoming, California, in places where people have looked at me and said, wow, what are you doing in Florida? It's absolutely amazing what you've done there and what you've created. Your economy is now the 12th largest in the entire world. What we've done here to create an opportunity for our children and for those that are coming up next is amazing. And to be a part of that has been one of the greatest honors of my life in order to advance for my daughter, who is working as a young adult in Miami, for my wife and I, who are looking forward to retirement at some point, and knowing that what we're doing now is laying that foundation for a great next generation that is going to be coming in and taking over for us. I look forward to the opportunity to be able to represent you, and again, I hope that I have demonstrated that I show up, that I answer your calls, that when we have disagreement, I will listen to your side, and sometimes there are opportunities where I can put your opportunities and your thoughts forward. So as we head towards election, I would hope that you would continue to consider me as your representative. And I would just leave you with this and ask that you would, number one, check out any information if you'd like to at tobyoverdorf.com. And finally, just remember one thing, there's only one Toby on the ballot. Thank you so much.
I want to thank everyone, especially the candidates, for being here today. We know these people are busy people right now under a lot of pressure, so we really appreciate their being here. And I also want to let you all know there are 3 constitutional amendments on the ballot on November 8th, and there's a small supply of information sheets on the lit table out front from the League of Women Voters of Florida, explaining those amendments and giving you some information that might be helpful. Again, thank you all for coming. Thank you to the Unitarian Universalist congregation for having us. Thank you, Reverend McDonald. Thank you, Janet Rader, wherever you are. There she is, who helped us put this whole thing together. And thank you all for being here.